This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Monday, July 22nd, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Joe Biden drops out of the 2024 presidential race.
Kamala Harris has earned this nomination.
I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Republicans reacting to President Biden exiting the race.
She turned on him like a dog. She's crazy as a bedbug.
I'm Clayton Neville.
What Democrats think of Vice President Kamala Harris. We have the results of a new poll.
The death toll in Texas from Hurricane Beryl and its aftermath is up to at least 23, half of those from heat. I'm Julie Walker.
Most of the computer systems crippled by the CrowdStrike software glitch appear to be back in service, but I'm Peter Schacknow.
A new migrant caravan is on its way through Mexico to the southern border and released after serving over 40 years. A Missouri woman's murder conviction overturned. All ahead on America in the Morning. Never before has a sitting president running for re-election stepped down from a race to the White House this late in the process. But that's what President Joe Biden did yesterday afternoon, endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him at the top of the Democrat ticket. John Stolnis has more on this political bombshell.
In a message posted on social media, the president said it was, quote, in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. A half hour later, the president posted another message offering his full support and endorsement of Vice President Harris to be the Democratic nominee. Many top Democrats are coalescing around the vice president, including the Clintons and the Congressional Black Caucus. In an interview with WCVB television, Democratic Senator Ed Markey says it absolutely should be Harris.
We can debate over who the vice president should be, but not who our nominee for president is. Kamala Harris has earned this nomination. And she will be the best candidate at the top of the ticket.
A presumptive nominee has never announced their departure from the race so close to the election. In 1968, President Lyndon Johnson announced that he would not seek re-election, but he did that in March. Democratic Congressman James Clyburn was on CNN's State of the Union before the announcement and said for any change atop the ticket to work, they must avoid an open convention on August 19th.
It will come out the same way it came out in 1968, 1972, and 1980.
Those are 3 years in which Democrats had an open convention and lost the presidency a couple months later. At the beginning of the day, former Democratic, now independent Senator Joe Manchin became the latest high-profile senator to urge the president to step aside and was asked on CNN's State of the Union if he would run should the president do that.
You would not pursue if Joe Biden said he was not running for re-election, would you?
No, I want to support a new generation.
A new generation.
A new generation.
Shapiro, Bashir.
And I'm talking about people that I know have the ability because they've shown their skill sets.
However, reports indicate Manchin is considering becoming a Democrat once again and throwing his hat into the ring. Nathan Daschle, former head of the Democratic Governors Association, says no matter who is at the top of the ticket, there will be a number of good choices for a running mate.
Governor Whitmer in Michigan would be terrific. Governor Newsom in California, and then Governor Bashir in Kentucky, and then the new governors, Governor Moore and Governor Shapiro in Maryland and Pennsylvania. All of them, I think, would make fantastic choices.
Vice President Harris will now spend the next few weeks trying to woo the delegates that had pledged their support for President Biden, and others who want to jump in would need to start their campaigns from scratch with less than a month to go before the Democratic convention. John Stolnis, Washington.
Republicans, including GOP nominee former President Trump, are reacting to President Biden's decision to drop out of the presidential race. With that story, here's Correspondent Clayton Neville.
Not long after President Biden announced he was exiting the presidential race, former President Donald Trump took to social media to say Biden isn't fit to run for president and isn't fit to serve. That comment just a day after Trump held a rally in Michigan, his first campaign rally since being shot last weekend in Pennsylvania.
Less than 4 months from now, we are going to win Michigan. We are going to take back the White House in a monumental landslide.
Trump told the crowd he knew the president's campaign's days were limited after former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signaled Biden should bow out of the race.
She turned on him like a dog. Well, I don't know if he should continue. All of a sudden, where did that come from? She was 100%. All of a sudden, she's not sure. Not sure means he's gone. But no, she's crazy as a bedbug.
Trump turning focus to Vice President Kamala Harris, who Biden is endorsing now that he's out of the race.
I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You know, you can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts.
During the Michigan rally, vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was at Trump's side.
We want an America that works for Americans, and the only way to do it is to re-elect Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
America now reacting to the sudden change in the presidential race.
It makes it more difficult for Trump. I think if it was Biden, it was going to be an absolute easy win. And now I think he'll have a much harder time winning.
Republicans say Trump will need to make his messaging loud and clear.
You know, how he's going to benefit us economically and those things that matter to the voters. So he's going to really have to get that message out now, even more so than before.
On Capitol Hill, most Democrats are praising Biden for his time in office and service to the country, but Republicans want him out right now. House Speaker Mike Johnson calling on Biden to resign, saying if he's not fit to run, he's not fit to serve. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik also echoing the call for Biden to step down. I'm Clayton Neville.
What do Democrats think of Kamala Harris? The results of a new poll when America in the Morning returns after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Showers and thunderstorms in store for many areas of the country. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson with the forecast.
Well, the umbrella will certainly come in handy today across a large swath of the eastern and southern part of the nation. As moisture continues to increase northward, showers and thunderstorms will break out across the mid-Atlantic and southeast today. In fact, some of the storms near the nation's capital, south through parts of Virginia and North Carolina, can be strong this afternoon, capable of producing localized damage in wind gust and flash flooding. With daytime heating, storms will dot the rest of the southeast, especially this afternoon. Thunderstorms are expected to be more widespread over portions of Florida, as well as parts of eastern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, where downpours can lead to localized flooding and slower travel. Much of northern New England will escape the wet weather today with highs in the 70s and 80s. Meanwhile, a cold front swinging through the northern plains will trigger some afternoon thunderstorms from the Dakotas and Nebraska east into Minnesota and Iowa. Expect a mix of clouds and sunshine from St. Louis and Chicago over toward Detroit, although a stray afternoon thunderstorm cannot be ruled out in these areas. Daytime heating will lead to afternoon thunderstorms popping up over parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and western Texas, which can lead to localized flooding. Otherwise, the big story out west will continue to be the ongoing heat wave with highs in the 90s across interior sections of the west, with triple-digit heat felt across the valleys of California, around Las Vegas and Phoenix, and northward in the eastern parts of Washington and Oregon. It will be more comfortable closer to the coast in places like Seattle and San Francisco, with highs in the 70s. And that's the weather across America. In New York City today, a mix of clouds and sunshine, high 84. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, sunny with a high of 88. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. What do Democrats think about placing Vice President Kamala Harris at the top of the Democrat ticket? On that very topic, the results of a poll with Correspondent Donna Warder.
A little more than 1,250 U.S. adults were surveyed by the Associated Press and the Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. The survey found that about 6 in 10 Democrats believe Vice President Kamala Harris would do a good job as president. About 2 in 10 Democrats don't believe she would, and another 2 in 10 say they don't know enough to say. Since President Joe Biden's debate performance in June, some Democrats are looking to Harris to step in and succeed Biden as the party's presidential nominee. But when surveying Americans regardless of party, they're more skeptical of how Harris would perform in the Oval Office. Only 3 in 10 adults say Harris would do well as president. About half say Harris would not do a good job in the role. And 2 in 10 say they don't know enough to say. About 4 in 10 people surveyed have a favorable opinion of Harris. Half have an unfavorable opinion. Donna Warder, Washington.
Heat-related Texas deaths continue to climb after Hurricane Beryl left millions without power for days. As correspondent Julie Walker reports, both Texas residents and Governor Greg Abbott are demanding answers as to why the power outages in the Houston area have lasted so long.
CenterPoint must specify actions that it will take in the coming months that it did not take in Beryl that will reduce or eliminate power outages in the event of another tropical storm arriving at the Gulf Coast.
It took more than a week to restore power for many Houston area residents.
Before the heat, no, she was fine. It took too long. 4 days was too long.
Janet Jarrett, whose sister Pamela ended up dying the 4th day without power, the ME ruling it a heat death.
We didn't have any air. She had a hard time breathing.
Her sister used a wheelchair and relied on a feeding tube.
I wish I could have took my sister somewhere else, but it was hard to get her in my car.
Experts say it may be weeks, even years, before the full death toll is known. Beryl knocked out power to nearly 3 million homes and businesses, and it came during a heat wave. I'm Julie Walker.
Banks and airlines hit hard. Friday's so-called computer glitch when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments takes a disciplined approach with investing, helping clients navigate volatile markets. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. In for Jessica Ettinger, here's CNBC's Peter Schacknow with Monday Business.
Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike is certainly hoping to have a better week this week than it did last week. CrowdStrike rolled out a software update that contained a bug, and that bug shut down Microsoft-based computer systems across many industries around the world. CrowdStrike quickly withdrew the bad update, and CEO George Kurtz says the company quickly went to work helping companies whose systems didn't completely recover upon a reboot.
To be clear, it was not a cyber attack. It was a content bug or update that we sent out, that we identified, and we rolled back.
Wedbush Securities senior equity analyst Dan Ives says the software recovery was quick. Reputational damage may be slower to recede.
The big issue is the brand damage, because CrowdStrike today becomes a household name, but not in a good way. I don't think this changes the long-term story, but other competitors, Palo Alto and others across, they will try to take advantage of this. That'll be a big focus in the sector.
The CrowdStrike issue took its toll on a tech sector that was already seeing investors take profits from this year's significant gains. But many market watchers remain optimistic for a variety of reasons, including the growing conviction that interest rate cuts will come sooner rather than later. That's what former Atlanta Fed President Dennis Lockhart says he hears when he listens to Fed officials these days.
They seem to be expressing openness to a rate cut in the near future. That could be September, it could be November or December, but they're certainly not disabusing the markets that could happen. So I think September is on the table, but it will depend upon how the next 2 or 3 inflation prints actually come out.
The next meeting of Fed policymakers is July 30th and 31st, with no one expecting any interest rate action at that meeting.
Peter, given the big gains for the first half of the year back to Wall Street, and with the presidential election coming up, will investors become more bearish on stocks?
Those are legitimate concerns, and you can add the fact that we're coming up on a few months, August, September, and October, which have had some very rough performances at times. But underlying that is a recent shift in investor focus away from the so-called Magnificent Seven stocks like Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, and Nvidia, and back towards small caps. Pickwick Capital's Chris Verone says the recent outperformance of the small cap-based Russell 2000 is giving him a great deal of hope.
It basically has locked in a really good next 12 months, kind of in the 20 to 30% range. So could this market consolidate into the conventions? I think absolutely. But what I think is more important, the spread between small and large, only 4 or 5 times in history we've seen it at this degree, this magnitude.
The Russell 2000 is up about 7% for July, following a multi-year slumber. Its last record high occurred in November of 2021.
Thank you, CNBC's Peter Schacknow. Migrant caravan numbers swell as they head toward the U.S. southern border. That story when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. Officials in Mexico are reporting that nearly 3,000 migrants from a number of countries are about to depart southern Mexico on foot. hoping to reach the U.S. border sometime before November. The group left a small town near the Mexico-Guatemala border after receiving Mexican government permits to travel through the country. Recently, Mexico has made it difficult for these caravans to use buses or trains, forcing them to walk hundreds of miles. We'll continue to follow the story with more details in the days to come. A Missouri woman who served decades in prison is free after her 1980 murder conviction was overturned. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports that the decision to release the inmate came after the judge threatened to file charges against the state's attorney general.
Sandra Hemme served 43 years in prison and is now free after her conviction was overturned, despite objections from Missouri's Attorney General. After more than a month of legal wrangling, a judge ruled that the prison had to release her within hours or he would hold the Attorney General in contempt. The judge originally ruled on June 14th that Hemme's attorneys had established clear and convincing evidence of actual innocence. But Republican Attorney General Andrew Bailey fought her release in the courts. Hemme is now 64 years old. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
America in the Morning for Monday, July 22nd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Biden makes it official on his X account. He is ending his bid for re-election. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Donations flow in for Kamala Harris, and members of the party are falling in line behind her candidacy. We'll have those stories.
The airline industry still being impacted by Friday's IT outage. I'm Clayton Neville.
A deadly mass shooting this weekend in Philadelphia. I'm Bob Brown. I'll have that story.
The long unidentified remains of a World War II service member have been returned home to California. I'm Rita Foley.
Employees at Disneyland have authorized a strike against the theme park. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. Look for many areas of the South to get drenched today. Welcome back to America in the Morning with the national forecast. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Most of the stormy weather today will be found across the eastern and southern part of the nation, while daytime heating will lead to pop-up thunderstorms across much of the southeast today. There'll be a few areas of more concentrated wet weather. One of these areas will be over Florida, where slow-moving storms can lead to ponding on water in area streets, resulting in slower travel and possible delays. This will also be the case over portions of eastern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. Meanwhile, thunderstorms near the nation's capital, south through parts of Virginia and North Carolina, can be strong this afternoon, capable of reducing localized damage in wind gusts and flash flooding. While much of the northern New England states will escape the wet weather today with a mix of clouds and sunshine around Boston and Portland, a stray afternoon thunderstorm can sneak into parts of Connecticut and Rhode Island. Another area of stormy weather will be found across the northern plains, where a cold front will be moving through the area. This can help set off afternoon thunderstorms across the Dakotas and Nebraska, east into Minnesota and Iowa. Brief downpours and gusty winds can accompany these storms. Much of the Great Lakes region will have partly sunny skies today, although a stray afternoon thunderstorm cannot be ruled out, including around Chicago and Detroit. The heat wave will continue to bake large portions of the interior west. Highs will be in the 90s across interior sections of the west, with triple-digit heat across the valleys of California, around Las Vegas and Phoenix, and northward in the eastern parts of Washington and Oregon. It will be more comfortable closer to the coast in places like Seattle and San Francisco, with highs in the 70s. Daytime heating will lead to afternoon thunderstorms popping up over eastern parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and western Texas, which can lead to localized flooding. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Carl Erickson.
Don't forget you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. After intense pressure from within his own party, President Biden announced on social media he's dropping his re-election bid. As correspondent Jackie Quinn reports, the 81-year-old Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to take his place and said he would address the nation in the coming days to tell the American people why he's ending his candidacy but will remain president for the rest of his term.
President Biden's been facing an uphill battle since his disastrous debate performance on June 27th against Donald Trump. And as much as he's tried to recover,
I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. I know how to do this job.
Voter support and congressional support have been slipping away. On his X account, President Biden wrote, "I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term," adding that being president has been the greatest honor of his life.
I think it's best. I didn't see him beating Trump. And so it will be interesting to see how all things hash out. Looks like it's going to be Kamala Harris, which I'm fine with. But I just didn't feel like he was our best shot to beat Trump.
I think she would be a pretty decent option. I would be interested to see who her running mate would be as well, to kind of see the whole picture.
There's been a steady drumbeat of pressure from even friends and allies of President Biden in Congress who've called on him to step aside after the poor debate performance on June 27th. The most recent, independent Senator Joe Manchin on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
He will go down with a legacy, unlike many people, as one of the finest and truly a patriot American. So with that, I come with a heavy heart to think the time has come for him to pass the torch to a new generation.
Manchin said he's preferred an open nomination process.
Let the process, a healthy competition is what it's all about. And that's why I believe it should be an open process.
President Biden has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. In his post, he writes he believes it's in the best interest of the party and the country for him to stand down. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Within hours of President Joe Biden's unprecedented decision to drop out of the 2024 election with less than 4 months before Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris is already seeing a surge of large donor support. The progressive donor platform Act Blue reported that it raised over $27 million from small donors in just 5 hours. CNBC reports that venture capitalist Reid Hoffman has endorsed Harris and will be donating more than the $10 million he has already given to the Biden campaign. Harris is also expected to get access to the Biden re-election campaign's nearly $96 million it has on hand. Along with donations, top Democrat leaders immediately threw their support behind the vice president. California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro all said they would not run against Harris. That does not mean that Harris' path to the nomination is an empty highway. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is believed to be interested in making a convention challenge, and former candidate Marianne Williamson said she will re-announce her candidacy. From political experts, members of Congress, and Democrat supporters, the move by Joe Biden dropping out of the presidential race was met with applause by those within his own party. Correspondent Julie Walker reports there is hope among Democrats. Vice President Kamala Harris can re-energize the party faithful and help sway independent voters against former President Trump.
President Biden made history today. He not only changed the trajectory of our country's politics, but he also secured his own legacy.
With President Biden announcing on social media he's not going to run for re-election, ending speculation, Democratic strategist Nathan Daschle says he made the right call.
We saw a number of Democrats, in the days leading up to this decision, suggest that he terminated his candidacy, and that must have been hard to hear. But I think President Biden decided that he needed to put the country first, he needed to put the party first, and that the most important thing was defeating former President Trump this November. And I think he concluded rightly that he wasn't the best candidate to do so.
He says it could not have been easy for Biden being pushed out by members of his own party, but endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris says a lot.
While it's not certain that the nominee will be Vice President Harris, she certainly starts off with a strong position. I think there is enthusiasm and energy in the Democratic Party that we haven't seen in months, if not years. And as a Democrat, that's something that gives me a lot of optimism.
Daschle says Harris's job now, shoring up delegates ahead of the Democratic convention next month so she wins the nomination.
I think this must have been an incredibly difficult decision. It's something that probably none of us could understand without having gone through it ourselves. But President Biden made the right call.
I'm Julie Walker.
When we return on America in the Morning, the CrowdStrike crash. After these messages. I'm John Trout. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. Fallout from a Friday tech outage continues to cause angst in the airline industry, leading to frustration among passengers across the nation and around the world. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Friday morning's IT outage was resolved by Microsoft pretty early in the day, but the implications of the faulty software update are still causing issues today, especially at airports.
It took me 3.5 hours from the customer service line to get to the front.
Well, now I have to reschedule my hotel stay, and now my bag is stuck in limbo.
Delta and United Airlines led the number of cancellations through the weekend. More than 1,500 canceled flights total on Sunday. That according to FlightAware, and over 8,000 delayed. Friday and Saturday brought similar numbers. Passengers had to make do.
We had to spend the night in the airport, and then we had to get in the huge line to rebook, and we waited in that line 4 hours.
At first, they stated that there was not a secondary pilot, and then finally it was the computer systems were all down.
A sense of helplessness from these travelers at DFW Airport.
We're tired, we're exhausted. We've been in the same clothes now for 2 days.
Me and my wife and 2 kids, and we went back to visit family in Pittsburgh. Just stuck for a few days.
And then I'll catch a flight from Odessa back out to California.
For many, it was quite the inconvenience.
They have left us in the dark most of the time, so really not very helpful at all.
Well, I actually traveled in from Cleveland, and the first flight was canceled, and then I traveled here. So, yeah, I'm stuck in Dallas for the night.
I actually missed work today, a very big meeting actually for work.
More delays and cancellations expected as we begin this week. While the outage itself was short-lived, it affected an estimated 8.5 million Windows devices, according to Microsoft, and it could take some time to catch up. I'm Clayton Neville.
In the story of a global computer outage, it's no small irony that a cybersecurity update caused the largest disruption of networked systems in history. With that part of the story, here's tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
If you used a computer on Friday, or went to the bank, got on a plane, or watched the news, it's likely you were affected by the CrowdStrike update. CrowdStrike is a Texas-based firm that provides large networks with cybersecurity updates, antivirus, and malware. Millions of computers had a Windows update on Friday that CrowdStrike included some untested code. Their widely used Falcon sensor software is causing Microsoft Windows to crash and display what's known as the blue screen of death. Ciaran Martin, former head of national cybersecurity for Great Britain's intelligence agency, said the scale of the problem was huge. The global tech outage affected hundreds of different sectors internationally, including Australian media, banks and government, U.S. airlines, Spanish airports, New Zealand and British media outlets, just to name a few. CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz apologized for the global tech failure that disrupted millions of people's lives depending on tech, and vowing to work with his customers until they get all their operations back online. I'm Chuck Palm.
Police in Philadelphia are investigating what sparked a mass shooting at a weekend party that left 3 people dead. On what details are known, here's correspondent Bob Brown.
At least 3 people are dead and 6 wounded after shots rang out at a party in West Philadelphia. Police responding to a mass shooting around 2 a.m. Sunday morning to reports of a person with a gun. They say more than 100 people gathered for the party on the 1200 block of North Alden Street. Sources say the victims killed were 23, 29, and 33 years old. The 6 people injured reportedly listed in stable condition. Police marking dozens of shell casings spread all over the street. Investigators are unsure of a motive for the shooting, but City Police Inspector D.F. Pace, speaking to NBC 10, says they'll get to the bottom of it.
It does appear that people were invited specifically to this location for this gathering. We're not exactly sure who is the organizer of this event. but that is going to be part of our investigation.
Police say the neighborhood is not known for gang violence. However, city officials say there have been 24 shooting victims in the community so far this year. Meantime, a pre-planned rally against gun violence is set to take place this week in Philadelphia. I'm Bob Brown.
He's finally coming home. A World War II POW whose remains were located after he went missing nearly 80 years ago have now been returned. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
The long unidentified remains of a World War II service member who died in a Japanese prisoner of war camp in the Philippines in 1942 have been returned home to California. U.S. Army Air Force's Private First Class Charles R. Powers of Riverside, California, was 18 years old. He was reported captured in the surrender of Bataan as Japanese forces invaded the Philippines. He was among those subjected to the 65-mile Bataan Death March and then held at a prison camp where more than 2,500 POWs died. Charles Powers died on July 18, 1942, and was buried with others in a common grave. He will be buried Thursday at Riverside National Cemetery, 82 years to the day of his death. I'm Rita Foley.
A rock band manager who was arrested in Russia on alleged drug charges learned his fate. A Kremlin court sentences Michael Travis Leak to 13 years in a Russian penal colony. Russian state media TASS called Leak a former paratrooper and musician and claimed he engaged in narcotics. His sentencing comes amid historically low diplomatic relations between Washington and Moscow and comes days after Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gerskovich was sentenced to prison on what the Kremlin claimed was espionage charges. Former U.S. Marines Robert Gilman and Paul Whelan are two other Americans being held in Moscow prisons. The White House has warned Americans to leave Russia immediately over fears of wrongful arrest. Shifting gears on America in the Morning, Robert Workman is in with Monday Sports.
American Xander Schauffele roared up the leaderboard on Sunday, firing a 665 to win the Open Championship at Royal Troon by 2 strokes for his second career major, both of them coming this year. He took the PGA in May. He's the first player to win 2 majors in one season since Brooks Koepka in 2018. Next, Schauffele goes to Paris to defend his gold medal at the Olympics. Baseball Sunday, the first-place Phillies shut out the Pirates 6-0. Tyler Phillips and the Magnesias tossed a 6-hitter. Royals over the White Sox 4-1. Seth Lugo retired 14 consecutive batters in one stretch and tossed a 3-hitter for his first career complete game.
My mindset over my career, I've always said I want to play every inning in the game, so finally got to do that today.
Elsewhere, the Cubs clipped the Diamondbacks' Nico Horner, doubled and scored the tying run in the bottom of the 9th, then walked with the bases loaded in the 10th to win it. Dodgers ripped the Red Sox last night, belting 6 home runs, including number 30 for Shohei Ohtani. It went 473 feet. Jorge Soler's first inning shot for San Francisco went 478 feet, the longest in the bigs this year. The Giants edged the Rockies. Cardinals launched 4 big flies in their victory over the Braves. Brewers turned back the Twins, Eric Haas with 2 of Milwaukee's 4 taters. Rays deflected the Yankees despite Aaron Judge hitting his league-leading 35th home run. Blue Jays avoid the sweep with a win over the Tigers. George Springer, 2 dingers. Rangers nipped the Orioles. Jonah Heim with a 3-run blast. Rookie James Wood smacked a tie-breaking 3-run jack in the 8th to lift the Nationals to a curly W over the Reds. Mariners held off the Astros, but star center fielder Julio Rodriguez injured his ankle trying to make a catch. He'll need an MRI today. Wins for the Angels, Marlins, and Padres. That's Monday Sports.
Robert Workman. Clearing the way to strike Disneyland employees. That story when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. Unhappy workers at the happiest place on earth may be setting the stage for a labor strike. Kevin Carr has the story.
This weekend, workers at Disneyland in Southern California voted to authorize a strike, which passed with 99% of the vote. It would be the first strike to hit Disneyland in 40 years. The final decision is up to the Disney Workers' Rising Bargaining Committee. Disney Resorts has said this week that they will continue negotiations on a contract that expired in June. The specific issue behind the strike vote is to allow employees to wear pro-union pins while on the job. But other issues like unfair disciplinary actions, worker surveillance, and wage increases are on the table, as Union Representative Anton Farnby told NBC News.
While we respect the fact that Disneyland have built their brand, they built it on the back of these workers. And we feel that the workers should be compensated and they should be earning a part of what has been built because they have led the way in building the Disneyland that we know today.
Cost of living rates in the county have increased by a factor of 5 over the past several decades, and some workers have taken to living out of their cars or in motels in spite of the resort's $19.90 minimum wage. A strike would be limited to about 9,500 employees, and Disneyland has said they plan to keep the park open. An additional 4,500 employees who work in other areas of the park are facing a similar contract negotiation when theirs expires in September. Character performers who organized under Actors' Equity this spring would not be included. I'm Kevin Carr.
Strong weekend at the box office, with a sequel from a 1990s film taking the top spot and the fourth installment of a classic in second place. Entertainment correspondent Margie Zaraletta has details.
That's a tornado right there, baby. Get some photos of that, baby. Birth of a tornado, nature's masterpiece.
Twisters opened in theaters this weekend with $80.5 million in ticket sales domestically, according to industry figures. That's about $30 million more than expected. It's a sequel to the 1996 movie Twister, with a new group of tornado chasers.
I know you love your dada. Go on, say it. Dada. Dada.
Yes, of course he loves you. He just doesn't show it on his face or with his body language.
Despicable Me 4 takes second place, with Inside Out 2 checking in at number 3.
Don't move.
Is it scary being an FBI agent?
Longlegs is number 4. A Quiet Place Day 1 is 5th. I'm Archie Zaraletta.
That's our show for today, Monday, July 22nd, 2024. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.